And welcome to another episode of the Spoiler Room. Yes, it is another special episode that we're doing this year, our monthly special, which is It Came from the 50s. And tonight we've got one from 1958 called The Crawling Eye, or as it's also known, the Trollenberg Terror. And I've got a great crew assembled tonight to talk about this interesting monster film from the 50s. First off, the diva of the spoiler room is here with us tonight. Say hello to Dawn. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, Mark. Good evening, gentlemen.
Glad to have you in the room with us. And next to her is the BFD, Mr. Glenn Bittner. Hello, Glenn.
Hi.
How you doing tonight, sir?
Yes.
Sounds good. And next to Mr. Glenn Bittner, the BFD, we, of course, have Scotty D in his house tonight. Hello, Scott. How are you?
Oh, I'm ready. I've got my snowshoes on. I'm ready to tackle this thing.
Are we ready to do some climbing into the Swiss Alps?
Oh, yes.
And yes, folks, we are talking about the Trollenberg Terror, a.k.a. the Crawling Eye, as it's known in the U.S. And
spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, right? And, yeah, which one is more spoilery, the Trollenberg Terror or the Crawling Eye?
I would say since you already know that there is a terror lurking in Trollenberg within the first scene, but you don't know what it looks like until like an hour into the movie, I'd say Crawling Eye is a little bit more spoilery.
That's true. And according to IBM, the summary for the Crawling Eye is a series of decapitations on a Swiss mountainside appear to be connected to a mysterious radioactive cloud. And gee, I wonder what's in the cloud. As Scotty D said, the title. What is it with titles and what do they think Americans are that dumb, especially in the late 50s?
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to just suggest that I think that it's, on especially exploitation films, sci-fi films, B-movies, whatever you want to call them, especially, 60 years ago, I think that there was this thought with the American distributors where they're like, oh, who cares? This is kids stuff. No one's going to get. Just tell them what they're going to get. Just tell them exactly what they're going to get. They're going to sit down for it anyway, and so that they would do this. So instead of hearing like they were that this was this about this movie where a lot of times it's like this mysterious thing and there's a cloud and you don't know what's in the cloud and it's really creepy and there's something psychic going on, and are they from another dimension, are they from outer space, are they from wherever, we don't know. And then they just said, oh no, this is for kids stuff, they eat it, chew it up on a Saturday afternoon and forget about it by Sunday evening, and so I think that there was this real disconnect about people who care. There's always been that way. It's always been that way. And it's especially true of how we treat properties that are not American,
Mm-hmm.
So, they do it. They recut them. They did that. I mean, like, this movie was cut by like almost 10 minutes. So they could get to the eye faster, all that stuff. So yeah, it's the difference between the artistry of the people who create a thing and the hucksterism of the people who sell the thing.
Yeah, it's definitely falls in between. Scott, Glenn, what about you? Which title do you prefer, the Trollenberg Terror or the Crawling Eye?
Trollenberg Terror. And only because there used to be a place in Milwaukee called Trollenberg Video.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, cool. I don't think I do remember that place. I remember like Nord Video Net.
It was obscure and hard to find.
Was it really?
Wow. But that's where I got my, I don't know what happened to it, but it's where I got my Evil Dead jacket.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Or Windbreaker, actually.
Yeah, whatever. It's an Evil Dead jacket. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Don, how about you? Which title do you prefer more, the Trollenberg Terror or the Crawling Eye?
Um, for no good reason, The Crawling Eye. Well, I guess for good reason. Um, I I just thrived on the 50s creature features. I never thought too hard about it. I just figured that they lumped them all in because there were so many of them. The killer shrews, the crawling eye, the giant leeches, wasp woman. I mean, if there was the giant Gila monster, you name it, it was there. It was a creature feature.
Sure.
And I love those films. So I just figured that when, as you and Scott were chatting about why they Americanized the name and created the crawling eye, I just figured it was to fit in with that series of creature features.
Sure, just it gave people a little bit more expectation right away. Well, this is going to be a creature feature because the Trollenberg Terror kind of sounds a little bit more mysterious. Though that title is based off of a series, I guess, was it about the same type of story?
I think so.
I think so, but it was actually a series in overseas that had the same name, the Trollenberg Terror, and that's what this movie is based off of. Now, Dawn, what are you were excited when this one got the most votes, and what is your initial feelings with the Crawling Eye, as we'll refer to it?
This movie is one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
It is definitely one of my favorite classic horror creature features because it is unlike the other, well, American ones done at the time. And even some of the imports that I've seen. Number one, it addresses its main character is a psychic, which you just don't see much. You saw a lot of ghost stories, or maybe I just didn't see enough film from that time. But psychic, actual psychic, a real psychic, not a charlatan.
Right.
And for whatever reason, it always entertained me because the mountains are alive with the sound of death and dismemberment instead of music.
Yes.
Because the movie does take place in Switzerland, and that always kind of entertained me, that dark allusion to, the sound of music.
Sound of music. Just picture her dancing with an eye with tentacles now.
Yeah.
That'd
I
be
also
cool.
liked this because it is very dark, and it's fairly graphic for the time, like really graphic for the time.
Yeah, it is, and we'll definitely get into some of that for sure, because it surprised me in a couple of scenes especially. So Glenn, how about you with your initial feelings with the Crawling Eye?
I remember seeing this. It may have been on Shock Theater or one of those. I remember seeing it there. I remember seeing it, in like junior year of high school. A friend had a bootleg video of this brand new show out of Minnesota that made fun of it. I mean, and I'm a lot like Dawn. I mean, I grew up watching a lot of these on like WVTV, Channel 18 on Saturdays and Sundays. This is the best type of stuff that they ran. And I watched this stuff growing up. So I always got a kick out of these. And I mean, I know there's people who will say, oh, the effects are like, dude, it was 1958. I still think that the creatures look kind of nifty. I always admire model building. And it's probably the miniature wargamer in me, because I'm always thinking like, man, I want that on my table. So like the little thing with their little observatory bunker, and then the mountainside and the eyes burning and getting blown up, which apparently not only could the bunker withstand the bombs, but even with a giant hole in the side of it, that there wasn't just a firestorm sweeping through everyone. But I mean, I suspended my disbelief when I was, when I had to accept the fact that Higgins' chubbier brother is supposed to be a mountaineer. So, but I enjoy this one. I mean, I hadn't watched it in, probably close to 20 years at least. So, no, that's not well. I haven't watched it unadulterated in probably 20 years.
There you go.
Until
How about you, Scotty D?
I love this movie. I can't remember how I saw it first, to be honest with you. I think I probably saw it on some horror host thing or something like that. Later on, of course, as Glenn mentioned, yes, this was the film that Mystery Science Theater did for their first episode of when their show went national, at least. The very first episode, when things were really rough on the show, they ran this, and they still run it virtually every day on Pluto TV as we're doing this, because that's what I wind up turning on for the dog when I leave to go to work every day. But that's another story. But no, and what gets me about this is that it grabs you right from the beginning, and it's not like your standard monster movie where you get like all this stuff going on. And I love all these monster movies. These are like some of my favorite types of horror films, this and gothic horror. But when you actually look at the film, you're just like, man, this is a really weird movie. It's a really bizarre film. And it also, as Dawn had mentioned, it was very graphic. It doesn't pull any punches. Right from that first scene, which I hope we're going to talk about, I mean, that first scene, the pre-credit sequence comes on. How are you going to turn this movie off after that scene? It's amazing.
Yeah, because I wanted to dive right into that scene because it's a great point to bring it up now because, yeah, you've got college kids up there on a ledge and you hear a voice off in the distance. Their buddy tried to come down and he's like, oh, wait, no, someone's coming. No, wait, there's a scream. And then the body falls. And then they're trying to prevent the body from falling down the Alps. But there's blood coming down the body. And it's just... oh, this opening scene is just, you're right. It totally grabs you and prepares you for like, you're in for something just a little bit different. And it surprised the hell out of me how dark this film goes and what it shows.
Yeah.
I mean, Glenn, what'd you think about this opening scene?
Yeah. Any movie that opens with a decapitation, I'm generally on board. Though I got to give major props to the brilliant acting of the terrified guy who just like lets go of the rope and just has to like turn to the wall and just be like frozen in fake terror.
He's just done. He sees his buddy's head's gone and he's just done. He lets go of that rope and he's like,
yeah.
Well, this film, I guess, had an excerpt at the time. It was an exit certificate from the British Board of Film Censors, or whoever was in charge of the ratings in England. And those things their ratings have changed throughout the years. But basically, what that meant, and it's kind of left over. They've kind of beat up on horror films more than anything over there. So there's that. But an excerpt meant that you had to be 16 or older to get into this movie. Wow. Back in the 50s. I don't know how strictly that was enforced.
Sure.
I don't know if there were some provinces where they said, well, if your mom's with you, it's okay. Or if they just were very, very strict and said, no, absolutely, 16 years old or you're out. But yeah, I mean, this was because it's a gruesome little film, and it has this opening that is just, I mean, it's right like something that you would expect to read like in a Stephen King book or something. It's really good. That opening, basically that and like the sewer opening of it, I mean, are pretty similar in terms of tone, if you ask me.
That's true. They are similar. And is it surprising for a film of 58 to be kind of this graphic? I mean, this is just the first opening scene, and we get to even we'll talk about some of the other scenes in a minute here of as it goes along. It surprised me for 58. I'm like, I don't remember watching a film from 58 that had, a scene like this and some of the other scenes later on.
Where you actually see the headless bodies, like, and they don't even say like his head was cut off or they always say his head was torn off. I mean, that in itself paints such a picture,
It does. Well, especially because later on, I mean, you hear the description of it being torn off later on in the film. When we get to another victim, we actually see a head that's been ripped off. I mean, the body, the neck's got all kinds of fleshy bits left over on it. I mean, later down the road, we get a severed head in a bag and you actually see the head. It's like, holy shit, this is 58? Don, does this surprise you for a 58 film?
It does. I mean, the other creature features of the time were not this graphic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's because it was an international film.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't held by the American held by American watchdogs, you mean?
Yeah, we Americans are kind of prudes historically. Which is hilarious because, Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's surprising. I'm watching the film as the film goes along and we get that great opening scene. And later on, we get the other victim. And I'm like, whoa, we actually see the decapitated body. And then later on, what's in the bowling bag? What's in the bowling bag, man? And there's actually a head there. And then right after that, there's a guy actually ice picking people or a pickaxe. He takes two people. It's just like, holy shit. For 58, I'm like, I'm used to, the rubber monster type, tarantula films where the death always happens in a shadow or off in the distance. But in this one, they're just like, no, we're just going to show it. And it's like, wow. But then after the credit sequence, we're introduced to the two sisters, which is another kind of an interesting departure, I think, and shows its international flair because we've got two sisters who are on their own and they run a show, and that kind of surprised me. Don, what'd you think of that with these two characters? I mean, it seems a bit different from other films we've seen at this era.
I was thinking about that as I was watching it this time, and thinking that the women in this film are actually fairly strong. I mean, they are independent women. They are touring and doing their psychic mind reading show. They are Anne and Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the last name.
Pilgrim.
But they're taken seriously. They're taken completely seriously. I mean, as they're introduced, she's obviously enthralled by the mountains and needs to suddenly stop in Trollenberg at this hotel. She starts spouting off about things that she doesn't know about because she's linked psychically to whatever's going on up there. And people just take her seriously. I mean, they're concerned because she fainted, but otherwise there's no weirdness. There's no they don't treat them like victims.
Mm-hmm.
No, they don't treat them like victims or lesser for that matter. I mean, she's spouting off stats that she shouldn't know about, and it's just like, you're just full of shit.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, there's something freaky with this girl, but she's talking true stuff. We're not going to deny it. Yeah, I love the dynamic and how these two characters are treated. Glenn, how about you with this? I mean, for 58, especially, I thought it was interesting how these two female characters are handled throughout this film, really.
Yeah, but I mean, for 58, sure, but also, look at where this movie's from.
That's true.
So it's England, which I mean, they have this weird mix of being progressive but utterly repressed at the same time. So, but in a lot of ways, I think it was because you figure these women, and the men too. I mean, they were side by side in a war.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was like at their front door. I'm not saying like American women didn't do stuff, but I mean it wasn't. The U.S. wasn't getting bombed. People in Cleveland weren't going to bomb shelters,
right?
And stuff like that. So I think that I think in some ways that is just the women. I think you see them treated a little different because they've I guess passed that test.
Right.
That guys like, oh, okay, you survived the Nazis, so yeah, you're okay.
Right. Scotty D, what about you with the Pilgrim Sisters?
That's a wonderful point Glenn just made about how maybe the attitudes in the film are due not just to the geography, but also how that played out during World War II. They had a shifting thing, but that's a wonderful point. I'm just gonna back that up and kind of applaud it rather than build onto it, just to say also that it was refreshing, because in an ordinary, if you hear anybody is spoken of as like a psychic or anything, you expect to see them debunked, or you expect to have the skeptic like smoking their pipe saying, oh yes, but that's because you don't understand about real things like science. No, the scientists have immense knowledge, and yet they look at this and say, "Oh, okay, let's hear what this person with the creepy connection to the unknown has to say." So, I mean, it's impressive to see the scientific and the paranormal working hand in hand, and they continue to work hand in hand throughout the film. Neither side is lessened by the presence of the other. So that was interesting.
Yeah, because usually a lot of times you get the scientists going, oh, this is a bunch of hokey, or you even think the Truscott character who you run into at the hotel, who you find out is a reporter or whatnot, you think he's just going to be like, oh, these ladies are full of shit. But even he's impressed by their show. And I really love Janet Monroe's Anne Pilgrim, that she's the psychic one. I loved her portrayal of this, how she just kind of get a little spaced, and they just do that thing where they like darken the area around her and she's kind of lit on, they light on her face and that. And I liked her character because, yeah, even though she faints, she plays this so well and so convincingly. You almost think, yeah, she could read people's minds, and her protective sister as well. Who I thought it was interesting how many guys kept trying to offer him cigarettes. and she would just refuse. No, I don't smoke. I'm like, holy crap.
Until the very end.
Well, yeah, because then, you're facing big eyes with tentacles. But yeah, the Pilgrim Sisters are very, I think I'd use an interesting portrayal here from what you might be used to from a movie like this, especially from the U.S. These two are strong characters. They're looked as equals. They make choices in here, and people aren't like, oh, well, that's a dumb idea. In fact, the guys make more stupid ideas make the stupid ideas like the Hans, who decides to drive his car through the radioactive cloud later on in the film. So I mean, the guys are making dumber mistakes than the ladies are in this film. And then speaking of the guys, we have kind of our main I guess you could call him hero, not quite. Alan Brooks, played by Forrest Tucker, who has some history here. Glenn, how do you think this played out with Alan Brooks and how he's actually run into this before, and that whole storyline they do with him as kind of the hero, I guess?
Well, I mean, the whole thing, like, he's run into this before, and it's like, and you didn't bother telling people that, hey, bad thing up here on the mountain.
Right.
Maybe not go climbing. Your head may become dislodged from your shoulders.
Yeah, he just let the guys go up there anyway. It's just like,
yeah, go ahead. Maybe it's this will hasten my ability to stop this, because when their heads get ripped off, then people will be like, oh, we should do something because they didn't believe me last time, and now I'll prove it and I'll let people's heads get ripped off. Maybe that's it. Maybe last time he acted too soon and everyone thought he was crazy.
Yeah, right. Well,
and now he's just like,
he worked for the UN, so but they didn't believe him. So.
Well, of course not. The UN is a useless, pointless organization that doesn't do anything that it should do.
That's right. Scott, what'd you think of Mr. Alan Brooks and his storyline of how he ran into all of this and how they kind of built that up with him?
I thought that was an interesting twist to the story, because it's somebody who's like an inside man. He's known that this kind of thing can happen. He's come up against it before. And I thought that was an interesting way to do it, so that he was coming to this place because he suspects it might be similar, and slowly he has to have it proven scientifically, or I guess by it actually knocking at the door. Actually slowly proves that, yep, this is the same thing. Now, what I notice is that when the scene comes and you do actually finally see the monster, which looks exactly like what the title suggests.
Yeah.
He doesn't have much of a reaction.
No.
You can you can chalk this up to two things. You can either chalk this up to, wow, Forrest Tucker really isn't very good at this. or if you'd like to give him little Mr. F Troop the benefit of the doubt here, you could say that, look at that. He looks at that and just kind of like nods to regard it as if like, oh yeah, I've seen you guys. I kind of knew what to expect here. Because of course the other, alternative would be, if you see a gigantic eye with tentacles coming through the door, would be to just like, lose control of your bodily functions and scream and just like scream those high pitched thing you can imagine, and then just jump out the window, and then you earn your X certificate. Let me tell you. But I looked at that and I looked at his reaction. I'm like, he didn't react.
Mm-hmm.
He has like almost no reaction to this. And I chose to think of it as that, no, it's because he kind of almost was dreading it, but knew what to expect. And was kind of looked at it like, yep, there he is. Now what?
Oh, yeah. Yep,
thought that was
right. Yep.
So I thought the twist about him being involved in investigations of this sort for a long time and coming across something extremely similar years before, I thought that was a nice touch, actually.
Yeah, it gave a little more weight to what was going on, and not just this happened to be all sudden happenstance. He just happens to be a UN guy, and his buddy professor happens to be researching there. You get less of that coinky dink and more of, oh, so that's why they're all meeting up there. Okay. And yeah, you're right. He's just kind of like, oh, hey, I man. Yep, there you go. Yeah, that's what I thought. Don, how about you with Mr. Alan Brooks?
No, I think that you guys are right. He's just kind of cool. because he knew what was. He'd experienced this in the Andes.
Yeah, the Andes.
So a few years prior. So he was kind of knew what to expect or dreading, hoping not to have the same thing happen, but not really surprised when it did.
And he knew what to do though too. I mean, it's just like, oh, okay, that's it. Let's start making Molotov cocktails. We're gonna burn them. I loved that bit. He just started making these Molotov cocktails once he found out what they were. He's like, yeah, burn it with fire.
It was so stupid when that. Okay, even I have to say, like, yeah, because Glenn mentioned it before, like that there. As weird and as crazy and as smart as some of this movie is, there's a lot you have to just kind of like just shrug off.
Yeah.
One is like the indestructible lodge there.
Indestructible lodge.
Where you can like bomb it to smithereens and it still takes a kick at man. I don't know. That Frank Lloyd Wright knew how to construct things, let me tell you.
But they really, really went to an effort to, at the beginning of the film, to point out that they made it indestructible.
Right, because it was supposed to withstand a huge avalanche. He shows the nifty blast doors. I mean
that's true. That's true.
Shutters and all the doors
set that up.
Yeah, all the doors were heavy. Yeah, all the doors were heavy metal. They made it a point a number of times to mention, yeah, they're in the hallway, but they're still safe.
That's true. No, you have a point there. That's true. I'd forgotten about that. You're exactly right. The one thing they didn't do, though, was that all throughout the movie, they're like, what can we do to stop it? Can we bomb them? No, I don't think that would work. We don't know what we're dealing with. How will we ever stop this horrible, indestructible... Oh, wait, no, never mind. You know what? Actually, any sort of fire or incendiary device will pretty much get the job done. Bomb them. Go ahead. Go bomb them right through the clouds. Or, in fact, like, here, I can just, like, light my bottle of scotch up there. Yeah, fuck you. I mean, this works just fine. I guess they weren't quite as indestructible as we thought. It's actually pretty easy.
Yeah. Well, they were afraid at first. They weren't sure that he's just like, we'll just kill it with fire. Hey, fireworks, awesome. Let's do this.
When in doubt, set it on fire. That's what I always say.
Well, he did make it a point though too. I love how they specified that. Well, you're not going to bomb this place. Well, it's okay. They're fire bombs. I believe he says that at one point. I'm just like, oh, well, in that case, they're just fire bombs. I'm like, what is that? Like napalm? Must have been like napalm or something similar. I mean, it is the 58. I don't know what the equivalent to that would be. Just fire bomb, a bomb full of gasoline. I don't know. But thank God it was indestructible, so it didn't kill our heroes, and it turned all the big glowing eyeball tentacle thingies into fiery ash. But speaking of the monsters,
dragon fire, Greek fire either, because all that snow and water would have made it burn more.
Yeah, there you go. Well, what's interesting is I saw a criticism. I think I was reading about it. I think it was Leonard Martin who said, it was okay but predictable, and I think another critic said, it suffers from poor special effects, but I don't know, for a 58 film, I dug the design of the crawling eye once you get to see it an hour into this hour and 20-minute film or so. Scott, what'd you think of the design of the crawling eyes and how they did those?
I thought they looked fine, honestly. I thought they looked really good. I mean, considering like what you can kind of expect. I mean, you could get a monster like the Horror of Party Beach, or a monster that I actually have a great fondness for, from It Conquered the World. I mean, you could get something that looks really goofy, but no, they gave you this eye. And remember, the film wasn't originally called The Crawling Eye. That was the American title after the thought. What's this horrible thing? It's like, well, they're these giant eyes with tentacles and that come out of this mysterious fog, and honestly, the creatures, the whole thing always kind of felt really Lovecraftian to me. Where just this thing is completely unreal, otherworldly, and coming out of this mysterious place and attacking people and then drawing back. And I found them to be pretty impressive looking, honestly, the crawling eyes. I mean, they were. I thought they were creepy. I mean, when I see that thing, the thing actually comes where it literally knocks on the door and knocks the door over, and then you see it on the other side. It's like a matte shot, of course, but you see it on the other side, and that's freaky. That scene, that is really. I mean, that's the thing, is that this film is so bizarre and everything, and I think that the design of the crawling eyes actually worked for it. These things could have looked like really dumb puppets very easily, but dealing with a limited budget for a film 60 years ago, no, I think the crawling eye, that gets the job done. Yeah.
I can't imagine what the audiences would have thought of, when they first saw that. I mean, that had to be pretty freaking creepy.
Well, in Britain, they were probably freaked out, and in the U.S., they were probably like, "Oh, finally, the eye that was promised in the title."
There it is, damn it!
But I'm sure, like, the people who didn't, who were originally seeing this in their original UK release,
right?
Not knowing what to expect. I haven't seen any posters, so I don't know if they gave it away on there or anything. But saying like, "Holy shit, it's a giant eye!"
Attached to a huge brain with tentacles. What the fuck? Glenn, what about you and the special effects in here? How do you think they match up for 58?
I think they're fine for 58. Yeah, I mean, it's puppets and rubber monsters. That's what there's no computer generated effects, so this is fine. Yeah, I mean, and actually, I can't remember exactly how I felt when I first saw it, but I mean, I can imagine like a young kid, and if I was like, say like 10 years old in 58, when they're first revealed that giant eye in the in the doorway with the tentacle, that's a little freaky.
Yeah.
So,
if you hadn't already been freaked out by the severed head in the bag and the decapitated body in the cabin,
but you don't really see that.
That's true. True. It's still kind of hidden.
His head's gone. Was it? Okay.
The crawling eye, you get to see it full force in all its veiny glory. Yeah. There's veins and shit on it, and big, huge brain attached to it, and yeah, I dug the design on this creature actually quite a bit. Don, how about you with the special effects in here?
I thought it was really well done.
Mm-hmm.
I like practical effects.
Yeah,
I like creative. I like there are parts that now you can tell things are miniatures and what have you, but I liked that they went full out with them. It was really nifty.
Yeah, I thought they were just going to do the one gimmick kind of through the doorway or whatnot, and then you just see, the rear projector part of it from there. It's like, okay, and a couple tentacles. No, but we get the miniatures, we get the diagrams, we even get some stop motion in here when it grabs was it the Truscott guy who obviously can't throw a Molotov cocktail.
Oh my god, that thing that freaked me out.
Where it grabbed him by his neck?
Yes! Yeah. I was just like, oh my god. Every time that gets me. Every time I'm like, it was on the roof and he didn't see it, and it hoists him up by his neck. And you're not expecting to see that in a movie.
And I do love the fact that he goes home with the bullet to God, and they're like, all right, close the door. I'm like, what? Just lock him out there. They let him go and close the door. Like, it's got him. How do you even know that? You have the door closed. And two, maybe it wouldn't have if you hadn't closed the door behind him.
He could have ran away, but no. Yeah, if I knock, then you can open the door. I'm like, who came up with this brilliant idea? Mm-hmm. Did you have a little picture window or something, or just leave the door cracked open, maybe? But yeah, the grabbing of the guy, I thought it was blended well too, though. You know, I mean, the stop motion part you can kind of tell, but I mean, there he is hanging. You know, the actor's hanging from the tentacle or whatever, and you got the monster projected behind him or whatever. That looked actually pretty dang cool and blended fairly well for the film like this. I thought it actually looked pretty good. There were less matte lines and such on it than Star Wars. So, oh no, I'm just kidding. Sorry, a little dig there. But yeah, so we get to the final ending and they torch everybody and hey and then we get that what seems to be kind of a standard for some of these films of the 50s, especially Dawn. It kind of and I message this to you, it just ends.
It just stops. Yep.
I mean,
The girl wins the boy at the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And actually both girls win the boy at the end of the movie.
Yes.
And the movie stops.
It's like boom, credits. You're like, oh, I guess the story's over. There's no drawing it out. Creature's dead. They get who they want. Okay. But this is kind of a common thing for movies back then, it seems like, where they just kind of abruptly end. Scott, how about you and the abrupt ending of this film?
I keep on expecting to one day watch this and see this with like, oh, and now here comes the scene in this print that was cut out of other prints that actually has like a stinger at the end. Because the way it ends, it's not just that it ends. It doesn't like fade out or anything like that. No, it seems like everybody's like going along and being casual. And then it shows the picture of the mountain, and you expect to see like another cloud come in, or hearing that ping, or have them switch to like another part of the world, and you see like another crawling eye or something. You know, some kind of twist where they could do like the end and have the question mark or whatever. And it doesn't. It like shows them out. It has them being very casual. Shows the mountain, and then there's your cast. Go home. What do you want? What you want? More crawling eyes? We gave you all the crawling eyes we could afford.
Glenn, how about you and the abrupt ending with this? Something we've seen before in 50s films.
Yeah. Yeah, part of me wonders, was it just like you have exactly $33,000 to make this? All right, so 33, we still got it. Oh no, that's it. You're done. You spend all the money. It's just done. We don't have final credits. That doesn't too bad. But the monster still doesn't matter. Done. You are done. Next movie.
Wait! I got $5. Can we do a title sequence? Yeah, it just surprised me with the film how it just kind of oh, that's it. That's the end. All right, time for more popcorn before you see the second feature of this film. So, one thing I did notice I want to mention is the music in this film. I thought was fantastic, especially the opening music to this movie, like so grandiose and creepy. And just what you want from a film like this. I totally dug the music throughout this film. Scott, what'd you think? The music all right?
Oh yeah, I thought the music was appropriately creepy and then bombastic for the big scenes at the end. Yeah, the music's legit.
Did we get a theremin in this though? I don't know if we got a theremin. The standard sci-fi, you know. Woo!
I know what a theremin is. Like, no,
I know. I just actually, in all honesty, I just wanted to make that sound. But
and I appreciate that you made it.
Thank you. Don, how about you with the music in here? Did you enjoy it?
Oh yeah. That's all I got.
That's all you got. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. The film is interesting. It didn't feel like it had as much subtext as It Came from Outer Space. What we watched before. In this one felt a little bit more straight, though it was an atomic cloud. But I felt this was a bit more straightforward. Glenn, what about you? We'll wrap it up for the night soon here, but did you feel like this one was a little more straightforward and a little less subtext than say the last one we watched?
What was the last one we watched?
It Came from Outer Space. You know, the whole idea of the Red Scare and such.
Yeah. I don't think I was on that one, was I? So that's why I just didn't remember what it was.
I'm sorry. I thought you were.
Was
I?
I don't think I was. But he just
your presence is always felt.
It's always felt.
Even if you're not here, you're here with us, Glenn. But
we always pour one out for you.
Okay, so in general,
you don't sigh for me. I figured I'd get a sigh instead.
I don't want you to take it personally.
No, I mean, okay. I mean, knowing what the movie was, yeah. No, there's not subtext like there was in that one. No, I don't think so. I think this one's much more straightforward.
Well, I mean, American monster films in general seem to have a little more subtext, and this one didn't. So, at least I thought.
Well, I mean, this is Switzerland, is where it's set. It was made in England, so we'll just say Nazis.
Nazis. There we go. The crawling eye was still the Nazi threat hidden in a cloud of.
Or it was the Swiss being neutral, hiding in their mountains. And this is their punishment: is some radioactive beast. There you go.
Don, how about you?
Yes.
Compared to other 50s monsters films with some subtext, especially for the U.S., do you think this one's more pretty straightforward horror?
Well, there could be an argument made for the potential alien invasion that they discussed being the Nazi invasion. There could be some argument for it. I mean, if you wanted to reach.
If you wanted to reach, sure. Though, I didn't see any armband on the eye monsters. So
really, you sure you didn't see the little SS?
There might have been a little crawling eye of the SS. There you go. There we go. There's a new movie we'll make.
I am being so good right now and not making the jokes I want to make.
You can, Scott. You're not restricted.
I don't want
here.
to get letters.
We're gonna get emails. But Scotty, what about you too? Do you think not much subtext here? Maybe the Nazi invasion if you're reaching, but
I don't think there's I mean, I would love to read something into it. I could do a whole episode of my show if I could. But otherwise, it's I just think that it's enough to just have this weirdness in there. And, something I want to mention that weirdness comes from the great writer on this film, Jimmy Sangster, who did a lot of the great Hammer films, wrote this movie. And it was written kind of like where if you were really into something bizarre, like, say, like the Quatermass experiment and everything like that, you'd really kind of get into it. And I think the weirdness is enough. You don't need the additional extra thing other than to say, yes, there's monsters at your door. But this is a horror film. There's always monsters at your door. Let's be honest, But I don't think it needs it. I think we've already got clouds that move due to sentient beings. We've got undead zombie foot soldiers. We've got psychic phenomenon. We've got giant eyes crawling out of the mist. I mean, we're good. We don't need anything else, I think.
Yeah, I'd say you got enough weirdness going on in here. We don't need any subtext to muddy the waters. Though after watching this, it makes me wonder if Stephen King watched this and got an idea for The Mist.
Well, he did. I know that the John Carpenter did for The Fog.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this was supposedly an inspiration for John Carpenter and The Fog, The Monsters in the Fog. And you can see it in The Mist as well. We know Stephen King liked The Crawling Eye because I mentioned it earlier. In the book It, they reference The Crawling Eye.
Yep.
And I want to say that he also mentioned it in the Danse Macabre book, but I can't remember for sure. So I mean, no, all those people who went up to make great horror films and write great horror books, yes, they read lots of Edgar Allan Poe. Yes, they studied all their stuff. They also spent a lot of Saturday afternoons watching movies like this.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and then they'd get one that really stuck with them. That really, when they saw this as a kid, like, this image stuck in my brain all these years, and now I'm going to get it out. And that's what they did.
Cool. Yeah, I can see definitely the influences for those films and from this, and that's what makes this a fun movie. And I'm glad this one won the vote, because I don't remember ever seeing this film and watching it. I'm like, this is one I could see myself watching again easily. It's very different, very odd, very interesting, all around interesting characters, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think so. So we're gonna go down now, and we started this last month, and I liked it, so I want to see where it goes this month as well. Where last month, if you didn't catch it, folks, for our It Came from the 50s, I'm going to go and ask our panel here one thing they learned from the crawling eye. So what I learned from the 50s, basically, in this case, what I learned from the crawling eye. We'll start with Glenn. Glenn, what did you learn from In the Crawling Eye?
What did I learn from the crawling eye? Wear a neck brace and helmet when rock climbing.
Scotty D, what about you? One thing you learned from the crawling eye.
I learned that sometimes there's not enough Visine in the world.
Nice. And Don, how about you?
Always close the blast doors on your mountain base.
Yes. Exactly. And what did I learn? I learned that even 58, the Molotov cocktail, was considered a weapon of choice against aliens. So there you go. Because you got a lot of whiskey there to burn, I guess. The professor probably got really liquored up, and so they just had a lot of flammable stuff there. So we'll wrap it up tonight. I hope everyone enjoyed our discussion. Makes you go out and go see the version, not necessarily the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version, but the one where they aren't making exactly snarky comments, because this is definitely one that is unusual for the time period, and I think it holds up fairly well today as just a fun little monster horror film that is a bit different than what you might be used to seeing. So here's the part where we get to shill the hell out of you by letting you know where all these fantastic people who have graced the spoiler room tonight, where you can find them when they're not here. So Dawn, where can we find you at?
InTheAudience.net.
Fantastic. And Mr. Glenn Bittner.
Oh boy, you can find me on Facebook and YouTube with the B-Movie Bunker and Guy in a Bunker Productions. You can find me on my gaming podcast, The Adventure Party, at gncast.com, or just follow me on Twitter at Guy in a Bunker.
Awesome stuff. Thank you very much, sir. And Scotty D.
You can catch me at movieocrity.com. Also, you can check out episodes of my web series at vimeo.com/channels/movieocrity.
Warning, some of his Movieocrity episodes do get the X certificate. So
yes, they do. And we tell and we get y'all give you a little warning before each one that does, just so you can either turn them off or get lubed up, whichever you prefer.
Wow.
Hey, welcome to Movieocrity After Dark. only on Cinemax.
Movieocrity After Dark.
Great. Finally an excuse to wear my bathrobe and smoke my pipe.
And on that note, I think we'll just say good night, everyone. So say good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.